Welcome to the Relaunch Your Career podcast. I am your host, Leah Lambert, career and interview coach and founder of Relaunch Me, where we help you find the work that you were meant to do. Welcome to the Relaunch Your Career podcast. Today, I have invited Belinda Hutchinson to be a guest and to tell us what it is like to work in the field of internal communications. Belinda is an internal comms specialist with almost 20 years' experience initiating, implementing, and leading communications strategy in fast-paced and very complex environments, including organisations such as ANZ, CGU Insurance, AMP, Moose Toys, and she's now at the University of Melbourne. Welcome to the podcast, Belinda. It's great to have you on as a guest.
Thanks, Leah. Great to join you. Appreciate the offer.
Belinda, I always like to start at the beginning. Can you tell us how you first came to choose communications as a pathway coming out of high school?
Sure. I think I was always one of those kids who was obsessed with words and writing and talking. And I think I enjoyed, I was one of those kids that would write stories in the school holidays. My mum would tell me all those things. So I think I naturally thought I would go down a journalism path. Coming out of high school, I'd done work experience at the local paper where I grew up in Geelong. So I was looking for university courses in the journalism field. But when I applied, I also put my hat in the ring for the public relations course, specifically at RMIT, because RMIT has a good wrap around communications courses. And I got into the public relations course, which instead of the journalism, which was probably for me a blessing in disguise. I think that gave me a breadth of skill sets that you're taught there that I've definitely drawn on right across my career. And you've just outlined some of the organisations I've worked with. But when I was finishing my degree at RMIT, I was doing an internship through RMIT with ANZ, and they offered me a full-time role. And so I started there, fresh out as a graduate, and kind of accidentally did 7 years there before jumping out into AMP for 5. So I've kind of stayed in that large corporate organisations where you can kind of have meaty communications work, and really enjoyed, applying everything I learned through universities in the different skill sets there.
One of the things that I tend to see is often people who do that course at RMIT, which I know is really highly regarded for journalism, PR and comms. Often graduates tend to go in and work in a PR agency and for a couple of years before moving into internal comms. Did a lot of your colleagues from that course go into agency first?
Yes, for sure. The course only takes around 50 students thereabouts from memory when I was going through 20 years ago. And a large percentage did go into agency, which I think gives great experience on, working across a number of accounts, seeing a number of different industries. And a lot of my friends did do that and very much enjoyed it. I took the in-house route, obviously, because I got offered a role where I was working at ANZ. And I was probably, in my personality style and my comms approach, more of that internal focus from the beginning, where I enjoy getting to know a large organisation, getting to know the stakeholders, going in depth on subject matter, suited my style a little bit more. But absolutely, friends did agency and had very interesting careers, and then often jumped across on one particular account and went in-house down the track to a specific organisation they'd worked on in agency.
Okay, and can you explain for those people who maybe don't know much about internal comms, what do you actually do?
It's a question I always get, that even from family and friends. What do you actually do in your day? I think the beauty of comms is it's very varied. So no day looks the same for me. And I think largely because you've got your planned work and things that you're working on. And then, of course, in a comms role, issues crop up or announcements are happening and everything you were doing gets dropped and you need to focus on the urgent, not just the important. I think I'm lucky too. So any given day you could be doing, to give you really practical examples, you might be working on drafting a note for a senior leader to send to their staff. You might be putting together a messaging pack that's key messages and FAQs around a project that's launching. You might be planning an event for staff to attend. You might be working on web pages and content. You might be putting a video together, filming and editing a video with a senior leader. So a very varied skill set in a comms role. And then obviously differences in subject matter. So you could be working on a large project, you might be working on a sensitive announcement. In my time with various corporates, I've worked on large offshoring or outsourcing announcements or restructures, change management, that kind of skill set. So it's many and varied, which I think sometimes is why it's tricky to just pinpoint what exactly is comms, but largely it's always around sharing a message from one particular person or organisation out to a particular audience. And the comms piece is giving the advice on how best we might approach that, who we might talk to first, what channels we might use, and then obviously writing the actual messaging. Does that help?
That does. And so when we talk about internal communications versus external communications, is it correct that internal is to employees and internal stakeholders and external is outside of the organisation?
Yes, exactly. Media and beyond, and sector or organisations related to an organisation. But in an internal role, we would normally approach things that anything you're sending internally, particularly to a large audience base, you would have the expectation it will go external. So you obviously, wear a hat that puts an external lens over anything you're sharing through internal communications. I think depending where you're working as a comms person, you might be in a one-stop shop and you're doing all the things. You're doing internal, external media events, social media in your role. If you're working in a larger organization, they usually obviously have a need for a larger team. And so you'll have within a corporate affairs function or a corporate comms function, you might have set teams or people working on events, social media, internal, external. But yes, your definition absolutely is spot on. The internal is that internally focused to staff in an organization. External is going out of the organization.
So what would be some of the day-to-day challenges that you might encounter working in a comms role internally?
And there's always challenges working in communications in terms of dealing with fast-paced information and issues that are moving quickly. So, and often with a little bit of stress and pressure in there, and senior stakeholders who are needing to be involved and sign off communications and make calls on things. So it normally comes down to when there's particular announcements going for an organisation, or there's a large project that might garner some media interest, and you're managing the internal side first to make sure staff are briefed on a change or something the organisation is announcing, and so you're working through making sure you're really watertight on all of your statements and key messages and FAQs that you want your senior leaders and staff to be briefed on, and understanding really clearly before an issue might go external, so that you've got some sort of control of the message. So obviously the way people interpret things is what is the really fascinating part, because that comes into play. Communications is always two-way. And so what you think you've communicated mightn't be what the audience has received. So it's always valuable to have feedback and channels to play that back to you and see how something's actually landed.
In a typical comms team, entry-level roles are often a comms coordinator level, and then perhaps specialist, then manager, then maybe director. What would a comms coordinator or an entry-level person be doing in their first few years in a comms role?
In that internal comms space, you're often managing, channels for the organisation. You'll do a lot more of the practical delivery of channels. So you might be doing web pages, first drafts of content of FAQs and key messages, comms planning, looking at making an announcement and phasing out what would actually happen on what day to who, which channel. So I think in that comms coordinator role, you're more in that very much in the delivery space. Whereas when you're getting to that manager, supervisor, director kind of space, you're making the calls and decisions around the best approach for a communications piece, and a lot more of the stakeholder management around this is how we're proposing we would communicate this piece of information, getting that stakeholder feedback and input, and meeting in the middle on what comms advice is and what the organisation's wanting to do. So that higher level, much more in the advice piece and the stakeholder interaction.
Okay, great explanation. So at that entry-level role, those first 4 or 5 years, a lot of writing, I would imagine. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. Always, yes. But even now for me, 20 years in almost, lots of writing, still daily. I remember at RMIT, as you talked about, the course is a great course. It's very vocationally focused. They would always give us these writing exercises where you'd have 30 minutes to produce a piece of content and you'd have to hand it in at the end of the shoot. And I used to think, because they'd say to us, this will happen to you in industry. And I used to think, oh, it's just testing out if we can actually do this. But actually, that's been one of the greatest skills that I would often have, even now, daily deadlines and or pieces of work that need turning around in 24, 48 hours. And you need to be able to very quickly distill a large volume of information from being briefed in by the business to then an output of sometimes just 3-4 lines of comment on something.
And I guess that's really important for that crisis communications, is it? When something really bad happens and you have to get messages out and be really clear on your messaging and get it out with a sense of urgency. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think people often look to comms to be fairly calm in that situation because you need to sort of keep your head, take a breath, think about what you're saying, albeit you've got time pressure and generally, like you're saying, in a crisis situation, something going wrong and you need to move quickly, but you need to always keep that calm head and take a moment to think about looking ahead to how this will play out, if what you say now and what that might mean for following comms and updates you're going to need to give.
Does that mean there's after hours calling if you're working for a large organization and something hits the media? Would you be likely to be getting a call on a Friday night or a weekend?
Absolutely in senior roles, yes. So particularly if you're working in the external communications or media team side, yes, you would very much be expecting, not just issues management, but topics when the queries come in. Obviously, they need to be managed and responded to. And if you're working externally, you're working with the news cycle. So you've obviously got to meet deadlines for publication or video pieces. It can't just wait till Monday in many cases.
So, from what I'm hearing, there's a lot of collaboration with different stakeholders in an organization, a lot of time management skills needed, need to be adaptable. I assume you need to be pretty organized and you need to have really good writing skills. What other skills do you think are really important for someone to be successful in this area?
I think ability to work with ambiguity, so be able to go with the flow a fair bit and not have all the pieces of the puzzle, particularly in the first brief of a particular communications piece. Being able to start something and have good initiative and draw on your skills and know you can get the ball rolling while all the pieces fall into place. I think probably no ego or thick skin around your comms will always get changed, and that's because they should. Senior leaders will put their own lens and personality into that. That's a good thing. But you certainly can't be wedded to your first draft needs to be the final output. So I think, it helps if you can go with the flow there as well. And I think, you mentioned time management and organisation. I think being able to know the urgent versus the important and how to prioritise in your day, which can be tricky when you've got competing priorities from a number of different stakeholders, but makes it fun.
It makes it fun. So, what have you enjoyed about your favorite comps? What are the fun parts?
I think variety of subject matter. Ability to move across different organisations and industries, and within those companies, often I've moved roles and you feel like you're in a totally different business, even though you're in the same parent company. So I think variety of subject matter and projects I've been able to work on. And then probably the different people, working with different leaders, having exposure to the senior management, seeing different styles. Comms is very lucky. You're often, if you're in an organisation where comms has a seat at the leadership, I've enjoyed, and I still love to write as I did as a kid. So I still enjoy that piece of, being given a huge amount of information and thinking, what are we really trying to say here? And I enjoy that piece of trying to narrow it right down and be clear and make it as clear as possible for the audience to hopefully receive a good message and that everyone understands. It's very satisfying when you can see something's gone well and the business is happy and it's launched well, all the staff are understanding and engaged. It's a satisfying piece of work.
There's been a lot of talk about AI and how that might change the way people work in journalism and communications. Have you seen a change in terms of how AI is impacting the work you do?
I haven't personally seen too much. But perhaps it's the piece I'm working in on more the internal side. I'm the first to say I'm not as savvy with online. I need to be more, and it's a skill set I need to keep building as I grow in comms still, the more the social media side in particular. From talking with colleagues around it, I understand it can be very useful around saving time and doing first drafts of things. For example, a first draft of a speech or a presentation. But I think my sense would be at this time, you still then need that human expertise or quality control in on it to be able to kind of bring it to a level that you need it to be. So I think I can see there's benefits to it, but that there's still, that involvement of your comms expertise that needs to come in and finesse things. But I personally haven't come straight up against it yet in my line of work, and maybe that's just me being a dinosaur.
Well, look, I guess it's also, as you say, it's the type of work you're doing and the writing. But yeah, look, I totally agree. I'm starting to use it a little bit in my business, but you definitely have to go and rewrite it and put your own human touch on it.
Yes, a good time saver though for the first cut of things. Yeah.
Definitely. So I'm not sure if you're involved in hiring decisions, but if you were looking for a graduate in your team, what sort of things would you be looking for on their resume?
So I think some of the skills we've talked about already on time management and organization, reliable, will be able to deliver. I think a willingness to sort of, get in there and get your hands dirty. I think in a comms role, you do get that good exposure to senior leaders, but you do also need to get down and do the doing, particularly as you're saying at that entry level role. Being prepared to build the web pages, write the first drafts of things, manage queries coming in, which can seem tedious, but is great. Strong writing skills and communication skills, and very professionals, able to sit in front of a senior leader and manage that conversation. And even if they need to come away to you and ask for advice on what to go back with, I think that's some of the skill sets I would see.
So obviously when a grad comes to you, they're going to have, an academic transcript to show you. There's some other things that they could be doing to demonstrate an aptitude or interest, like having their own blog, or is there any things that you would recommend to students who want to stand out from the crowd? Because I understand it is a competitive space as well.
Yes, I think any effort shown to have work experience in that field, a willingness to go and do. I have seen, staff members I have had work with me previously and been involved in the hiring decision. They've gone and done internships, unpaid internships, showing that willingness to go out and have a go, even if it's a week here or there. In agency, often where you're getting that quick exposure to writing and fast deadlines and skill sets that'll set you up well. I think if people are personally interested in blogs and things, that's great too. It can be, I've seen other staff have helped with events in the past, or they've got involved with a local campaign, whether it's a local community organisation or even your sporting organisation, and they've had a go at doing the regular newsletter update, or anything that shows that interest and application to comms is always valuable, and just shows a willingness for them to want to pursue that path and have a go at it.
Yeah. So internships, volunteer work, any sort of writing skills that they've been able to develop in real life sounds like a good strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And if they've been lucky enough to write something for publication, that's brilliant too. So these days it's much more accessible to do that with, like you say, with blogs, podcasts, online commentary. You can have that chance to be published much earlier than, say, back in my day coming out of uni.
Well, that's right. And LinkedIn, obviously a great forum for that as well.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Belinda, that's been really helpful. Do you have any other advice for students or even potential career changers who might be interested in a career in comms?
Sure. I think give it a go, because the field is varied. There's many and varied applications of comms and different parts of it you can get involved in. Try some things and see what you like. You can change around within the comms function or industry, if you like, itself anyway, whether you're in, like we've talked about, internal, external, events, social. There's many different ways you can apply the skill set. So I think try and get out there and try some skills even at a local level and see what you enjoy, and don't be shy to give it a go. I think often people think with comms, often there's particular science to it, and there is sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's often the backyard barbecue test. I will often catch myself on, how would I say this to a family member at a barbecue if they ask me about what's happening with this project, or what did you just announce at blah, blah, blah company? The way you say it first up is often the very best way to write it. So it's keeping it simple and trusting yourself and having a go.
Yeah, I love that. The backyard barbecue test. I'll have to keep that one in mind. Thanks, Belinda. That's been really eye-opening and really useful. So I really appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy day.
No problems, Leah. Thanks for having me. And I hope it's useful for anyone interested in a comms career.
Thanks, Belinda. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Relaunch Your Career. If you did, please subscribe, share with your friends, leave a review, or connect with us on social media at Relaunch Me Career Consulting. If you have any questions about the episode or the work that we do, then contact us via the website relaunchme.com.au. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.